Charisma Quotient. I'm your host, Kim Seltzer, a dating and makeover expert, where I will help you build confidence, make connections, and find love from the outside in. Okay, I have something to share with you that I don't think I actually ever shared before, at least on this podcast. And this has to do with my journey after the divorce. So, my first kiss after divorce. That's right. I kissed a boy for the first time. And I think it was over 10 years at that time and being married for that long. And I remember it feeling so weird. It was like I was a schoolgirl just kissing a boy for the first time after homecoming. And it was scary and it was fun all at the same time. And you know what? It was necessary. It was necessary for me to feel alive again after a long time being in a cocoon and a dark period of my life. It was necessary to get my mojo back and to feel like a sexy, confident woman again in my second act. And if you're listening and you're over 40, 50, or even 60, you may have wondered, is it still possible to feel sexy, desirable, curious, playful, even fully expressed in my intimacy at this stage of life? And maybe you've been in a long-term relationship and something feels, just off. Or you're newly single and you're trying to remember what real desire even feels like. Or maybe you've always been the pleaser, the rule follower, the good girl, and no one has ever taught you how to explore your sexuality, your pleasure, or even what you actually like. I mean, maybe you didn't have experience with more than one or two people. And on top of that, there are so many unspoken rules that people feel trapped by. I'm too old to explore. Good women don't do that. Respectable men don't do that. I should stay in a box society gave me. People will judge me if I want something different, blah, blah, blah. The story goes on and on. I remember specifically, I think I've talked about this on another episode, but it's so on point. There's a woman who came to me and she was in this other relationship program and she was 45 and she was looking for a relationship and nothing was working. And she was getting so frustrated. And on the group calls, she would look at all the other women around her and they were having success. And she just felt like isolated. And she's like, what is wrong with me? And then she came to me saying, I just want to find a long-term partner and nothing is working. And I asked her a very simple question. I said, have you just dated? Have you ever just dated for the sake of dating? And she said, well, no. I said, okay. Have you ever had sex? She said, no. Now, here's a woman who came from a very religious background. So she wasn't allowed to do that. And it was something that was very shameful for her. And after we started talking, I said, I don't really think it is what you want, meaning a relationship. She's like, well, yeah, I do. I said, yeah, maybe long term, but I don't think that right now that is really what you want. I said, what is it that you want? And obviously, we had a whole discovery call and we were peeling away the layers and there was this long pause. And all of a sudden she says, I want sex. And she just, and it was so liberating. We're like, hallelujah, let's go for it. Let's create a plan to get you some, and she said it just without shame. And it was such a release for her. So we did it. We had a whole plan around just having her date and exploring her body and sex in a very safe way, obviously. But it was the very thing that she needed. I mean, she was spinning her wheels trying to get into a relationship when really she hadn't had the other experience that was so necessary for her journey. And here's the truth. You can have a long, meaningful, committed relationship in any form that feels right for you without shame, but you have to know really what it is you want. So you're not too old, you're not too late, and you're not wrong for wanting more connection, pleasure, curiosity, and expansion. So today, we're diving into a conversation that I know so many of you secretly crave, but rarely have a safe place to talk about. So we are going to talk about it right here on the podcast. And that's why I'm excited about today's guest. I couldn't think of a better person, actually, when I saw all about her. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about the intimacy, the desire, sexual confidence, all of that, but especially in relation to you being a later dater, later in life. She is a certified holistic sexuality educator and embodied intimacy and relationship coach. She's like a sister, celebrated for her warm and approachable style. I think you're going to love her. Her holistic approach to education and coaching is deeply rooted in her own pain to purpose journey. She brings an empathetic and non judgmental approach and is known for creating shame free, I love that, shame free spaces where she invites individuals and couples to navigate complex topics like long term partnerships, consensual non monogamy, life transitions, and so much more. Welcome, Lauren Elise Rogers. It's so good to have you here.
It is so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, this is going to be such a, juicy conversation, but also one that is so needed. And I've talked about on my podcast before different aspects of sex and intimacy, but I think you have a very special spin on it, and especially in relation to your story. I mean, I read a little bit about your story, but I'd love for you to share more and how you got here.
I think, especially for your audience, that I want anyone consuming our conversation today to know I have been there, that this isn't something that I just teach on. This is something that I lived, and literally all of the juicy things that we'll get to talk about today are the tools I utilized as I was moving out of. I got goosebumps when you said cocoon. I called my space that I lived my cocoon, legitimately, because it was where I felt like I was a caterpillar. I crawled in some of my darkest days to this little basement apartment where I had to become goop and then I had to become a butterfly. And that cocoon season was so precious to me. It was so incredibly precious. So I was so glad you said that. And I want to make sure that everyone listening knows that I haven't always been a certified holistic sexuality educator and an embodied intimacy and relationship coach. No, no. So let's go back to the
Yeah.
beginning. Um, so I was born in a very small town in central Virginia called Lynchburg, Virginia. And Lynchburg is precious. The cost of living is wonderful. And there is the presence of this place, Thomas Road Baptist Church and Liberty University, that have a certain form of evangelicalism. And I love faith, and I think it is a wonderful thing for many to inhabit. And yet, my parents both found religion out of their own struggles. And so it became this thing that they wanted to give their daughter, me, the
Mm.
oldest of five children. And it became the we're not going to do anything the way we experienced it so that we can keep our baby girl more safe. And listen, I understand. I think both of them came from pain, from desire to belong, from desire to live a life that felt less painful. And so they began to raise me up in this religion. And with that religion came a bunch of purity culture lessons. I was being raised in the 90s and the early 2000s where my worth really became equated to my virginity, to my purity.
Mm.
And again, God bless my parents. I do not think they were doing this to put me under a rock and to keep me from sexual development. I think they wanted something better for me. So I was taken to a thing called a purity ball. I was given a purity ring. I was told my body and my heart belonged to my father until I was given to my husband. So fast forward many years, I was 21 years old. I was engaged to be married. My mother got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we bumped our wedding up 6 months and got married in 10 days because her dying wish was that she be present at our wedding. It was something. And on the night before our wedding, she pulled me aside, and this is the one piece of sexuality education I ever got. Lauren, you take care of his needs, and everything else will be fine. That
Ooh,
was it. Yes, God
wow.
bless my mother. May she rest in peace. That's bad,
Yeah.
everyone. Okay. I had never been taught about female pleasure. I had never been taught about anatomy and what pleasure could even look like, or what I should expect, or what I should want, and what I should desire. So we go ahead and get married. She passes away. It triggers alcoholism in my husband. And I also begin to experience complete lack of desire from my husband to me. And this goes on for 10 years. So I'm now married to an alcoholic who has no desire for me, is also dealing with horrific things called parasomnias and multiple horrifying things. It's controlling, it's abusive, it's bad. And yet, I have never been taught about any form of abuse. I have never been taught about consent, and I had never been taught about desire. So, about 10 years into our marriage, we have a child. She's about 7 years old, and a friend starts having dreams about me. A friend in church starts having dreams. And so she takes me on a walk and she sits me down on a park bench and she says, "What is going on?" And I say, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." And she said, "No, I keep having really horrifying dreams. What's going on?" And so, for the first time, I say it all. I say exactly what's going on in my home, exactly how long it is and since I've been intimate, exactly how long it's been since he struggled with these parasomnias and alcoholism and all these things. And she says, "We need to get you into therapy right away."
Mm.
And I said, "My husband's going to say I'm tattletaling. I can't do that." And she said, "Even more reason to get you into therapy." And so the therapist, her jaw hit the floor, similar to yours just then. And she said, "Okay, how about we just make some boundaries?" I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "How about if he can hold fast to these three boundaries this week, we will look at building some tools for you two to enhance your communication, the health and well-being of your relationship. How about if he can't, that we separate you?" And I'm thinking in her mind, she must be horrified that I've got a child in this too. Like, God bless her. She saved my life. So, of course, my husband was not able to follow through on those boundaries. We entered a season of separation, which eventually led to a divorce. And through the process of divorce, though, because of the faith community that I found myself in, I became the one who had gone rogue. The church did not grant me my divorce because they could find no grounds. And
Ah.
so I had to lose my entire community. So the reason I moved into my cocoon is that my husband kicked me out of my house and I lost every friend and everything I had ever known. And I was penniless and living in the only place I could afford, which was this little tiny basement apartment with a rat dying in the wall. It smelled to high heaven. And so it was there at the bottom, right? Completely in my late 30s thinking, what now? What now? I've always been told that it was best to be a virgin. And so am I now a whore? What am I? If I'm no longer a virgin, do I no longer have value? And okay, so I could have sex with anyone I want, but is that what I want? And so I entered this era where I did begin to explore sexual activity for myself, but simultaneously began gobbling up any book I could get my hands on female sexuality, female desire, the female sexual response, healthy relationships, codependency, you name it. One book led to another, led to another, led to another as I began to heal myself in my cocoon, which led to me getting a business I had built acquired, which led to business trips and flying, which led to me putting a zip code in an app, which led to meeting a man for a sexy one night stand. We'll talk about all of this, I'm sure, which led to, oops, falling in love with this one night stand, which led to him moving to Virginia and now being my adoring, wonderful husband, who at some point said, "Hey, you know, all of those things that you did to find out why you had stayed in an unhealthy relationship for a decade, why you had become so codependent, why you had never understood the beauty and the sacredness of your sexuality. You know, all those things, you should start a business about that." And I was like, "What?
Um,
Who would who would do that? Why should I do that?" And he was like, "Trust me, I've dated enough women to know I think they could really benefit." So I went back to school, and then in January 2022, I hung up a little shingle for Sex Ed for You and thought, I wonder if there's other humans out there who could really benefit from developing a sexual ethic, sexual values that they truly align with, and experiencing this flourishing version of sexuality that I deeply believe could heal the world. And sure enough, I now get to work with clients all around the world and talk to humans like you. So this is
oh,
all my dream come true.
my God, that's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, you know, and I mean, most people know my hot mess story. And I always say, like, our adversity are gifts in disguise. We don't see it at the time. And it's not until you look back and you're like, oh, there was the gift, because there's always something that we're supposed to do with that. But sometimes a lot of people don't hear it or they don't do anything with it. And that was like my follow-up question because like using the metaphor of the cocoon, a lot of people who hit rock bottom like that and even like have those self-worth issues and have been taught in some way, shape, or form that their stuff doesn't matter, right? Like their emotions, their desires, whatever it is. And they're always focused on other people, which it sounds like, just it was the culture of what you grew
Yes,
up in, right? Like, and
yes.
again, I love that you said it's not to blame anybody. It's
No,
just, it's just literally something that gets passed on like a
yes.
baton. And
Mhm.
you decided to say, no, I'm not passing that on anymore, But in those moments, like, how did you get the motivation to at least just poke holes in the cocoon to kind of start putting your wings out there? Because it's hard. It's not easy.
Oh my goodness. No, it is not easy. And I need everyone to hear that because I think when we see individuals like you and I who are where we are now, well, I want their life. Yeah. Well, honey, it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
What I think was to speak to your earlier point of it's almost a blessing in disguise, right? The
Yeah.
Hot Mess Express, the everything I went through. What was so beautiful about the gift of failure, about the gift of everything collapsing around me, was I was so crystal clear that I had done it all their way. So I was all of a sudden, you and I were talking before we went on air that I have a musical theater background. And so I have a lot of interest in scripts and stories. And when we were little and we were creating a character and we would come on stage for our scene, one of the things we would do and we were learning is create the backstory of the character, right? What were they doing prior to the scene that you're seeing them in? And so it was really beautiful to look at myself there on the floor of my basement apartment in my cocoon and go, what what led to this, Lauren? How did you get here? And so, as I began to say, okay, well, I was fed this purity culture gospel.
Hmm.
Well, where did that begin? Okay. And so I traced it all the way back to the Council of Nicaea and Plato and his mind body dualism and really began to inspect okay, well, what did these church fathers say about women? What did they feel about women? Oh, well, that was back in the time where everyone was misogynistic, and we really believed that women were the gateway to the devil. That is literally Tertullian's words. Okay, well, so once I have looked at that, do I ascribe to their beliefs anymore? No, I do not align with the fact that women are the gateway to the devil. That's not a part of my ethic. And so for me, this isn't the way for everyone. I began to see that I wanted to align with philosophies and ethics that aligned with my true value system. And so for me, it was less of like poking a hole in somebody else's, but saying, you can exist in that story. This is now mine. And so closing the door on that chapter felt very clear
Mm.
and very much more aligned with who I wanted to be in the world, the people I wanted to welcome into my spaces. And I think for the longest time, I had been able to exist in that former space simply because I fit the mold. And so I could walk around, right? Untraumatized, unhorish, un this, because I had done it all their way. And I began to see that the moment I did not, I read a book once that talked about models of belonging, and that there are some models of belonging where you must believe a certain thing and behave a certain way in order to belong. And that is what I had been a part of. And
Huh.
I said, I no longer want that. I no longer want to only be in spaces where my belonging is contingent upon my behavior and my belief system. I want to be in spaces with women where we can celebrate and uplift each other's different belief systems. That's beautiful. So it just became incredibly clear to me that I no longer wanted to connect myself to places that extended belonging to human beings contingent upon their beliefs and their behaviors. And so for me, that was kind of where I started to poke the holes of, I'd always thought there was one perfect way to do things and had ascribed myself just to that. But that turned out to yield this place on this basement floor. And I want to build something new. Yeah, great
So it was
question.
more, it sounded like it was like education for yourself. And like the more you started absorbing that there could be a different way,
Yes.
that it kind of slowly helped you crawl out of that. And then I was curious, and then we can kind of get into like how you work with clients. How did that then translate the men you attracted? Because, obviously, and I talk about this all the time, we can't change the men, like the men are the men, but all we can do is look at ourselves and what kind of like habits do we have that creates a certain dynamic with the people we attract, right? So I just
Yes.
wonder, did you see a difference when you started shifting and changing? Because obviously, like you landed this great man. I just wonder, like, kind of that little journey in getting there.
Oh, it's such a good question. He and I were talking about this today. He just arrived home
Um,
from a trip.
yeah,
And yeah, I was talking about the fact that one of the things that was so incredibly impactful for me was understanding the role, again, theater kid,
right.
I had played in my first marriage. What was it subconsciously that had attracted me to that? It was really important. And you dig enough in any self help text and any educational material, you will find that all of us are in some way trying to heal childhood wounds, trying to
Oh,
continue
everyone.
to implement a
Yeah.
fantasy bond. And so that became number one. Then I read this incredible book called The Erotic Mind by Dr. Jack Moran. It's one of my favorites of all time. And if everyone has not read it, please go read it because he's talking about what turns us on and our core erotic themes. And he has these four cornerstones of eroticism. And you'll feel why this is very important because we are attracted, we are titillated by certain things as sexual humans. And when I discovered this, I was like, oh, okay. Because for the things that turn us on are not always the things that make for healthy relationships. And so many of us are chasing erotic turn ons
Oh, yeah,
and
that's so
finding
true.
ourselves,
Yes.
right? It's so fun to look at this. Okay. So the four corners of eroticism are longing and anticipation, violating prohibitions, search for power, and overcoming ambivalence. So I want your audience and you too, because this will be fun for you to tell me which ones jump out to you. As I describe each of these cornerstones, I want you to think about your favorite rom-coms, your favorite books to read, your past loves that you can't stop thinking about, the men you've attracted in the past. Okay. So longing and anticipation is very much this long distance love affair. This thing that's just out of reach, the relationship that you never got, right? The oh, it's my best friend's brother, right? This kind of, I long for him, but I can never really get him. Or I'm anticipating the meetup, right? We have this great long distance love affair. I see him once a year and our sex is so hot, Lauren. Why is sex so great with him, but not with anybody else? So that's longing and anticipation. The next one is violating prohibitions. This is hilarious for me, who works with a lot of people who came out of high control religion, because so many of my clients had their first kiss behind the baptismal or in the car outside of youth group or something that's a little bit of the naughtiness factor. Okay, the naughtiness factor that we shouldn't is a big turn on for many. Okay. Number three is search for power. And of course, we could connect this to kinky things or BDSM, of course, but also it is this desire to be in control or controlled. Okay. So sometimes this is narcissistic human beings. Okay. This is, oh, I love a man who takes charge. Well, yeah. So sometimes that has a dark side too. And I'm sure you see this often.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is search for power, power over, power under. The fourth one can be confusing because it's overcoming ambivalence, but it's important and it changed my life, might change another person's. So, growing up, I was the oldest of five children, but I was in a very patriarchal society. And my brother was often lauded as far more important than I because he was the oldest son. So there was often this idea of ambivalence towards me. Lauren was, yeah. And so there was constantly a working, this churning, this energetic striving to overcome the ambivalence my parents had towards me. And I was also in the aforementioned theater, where I was around a lot of gay men and a lot of gay boys who also were highly ambivalent to me. But I was not being educated on orientation and attraction. So I was developing these very strong bonds with gay men. And I love to say, and this is the clincher, that my first kiss, my first boyfriend, and turns out my first husband are all happily gay. So
Oh,
it was
interesting.
fascinating to me
Yeah.
When my husband came out to me years after we were divorced and said,
Ah.
"Hey, I'm actually gay," I said, "No joke," right? Oh, this is all making sense right now. So, Kimmy, this is what was transformational for me, is I had to realize that I have a subconscious attraction and erotic titillation to ambivalence. So, what
Hmm.
I kept finding myself attracted to during my happily, I fondly call it my slut era. Okay. I was having these sexual encounters that were very healing for me. It was wonderful for me to know I can do this with my body, very similar to the wonderful story you told at the beginning of our conversation. It was very powerful for me to know I can do this. But what I kept finding is these men were not interested in relationship with me. And yet I kept striving. I kept trying to overcome their ambivalence. So
Hmm.
once I read this book, my brain was like, oh, wait a second. That is a very hot erotic trait. But what if I start to understand who I am as a human being, what I have to offer, and what exactly I'm looking for? And so I started these Lonely Hearts Club ads in my journal, right? Eligible divorcee seeks such and such man. And I started doing these really funny writing exercises that were a form of manifestation or vision boarding or prayer, whatever you want to call it. And so then I would take these silly exercises that I was having so much fun doing, and I would start putting them into what my dating profile actually looked like. I am this.
Ah.
I want this, basically seeking this. Basically, if you meet these criteria, apply. That's it. That's it. And so when I was traveling to Long Beach, California, I was looking through other people's profiles, and I had always told a friend of mine that I have such a guttural sacral response in my body when I see something that's a yes. So I'd always said on a dating app, I don't know if I'll find anybody, but it's a really good experience for me to stand in my wanting, then also to see what's out there because I live in a nowhere town in Virginia because my daughter's gay father, is still here. So I'm still here. And I want to see what the universe has to offer me. So when I travel, I'm going to put that zip code in. And so I would scroll through these pages and mostly be disappointed, there's a lot of disappointing men out there. I know you know. And yet this one time, my now husband's photo came up and my whole body went, whoa,
Ah.
oh, oh. And so then I liked his profile. He sent me a message later one night that said, "Lauren, love, you're in Virginia. State your business." And I said, "I'm traveling for work and I like to keep my options open." And he said, "Here's my phone number. Give me a ring." So we shared phone numbers. We talked on the phone that night. And it was if I had met someone I had known for decades. And our date was magical, our intimacy was magical. And yet, I think, not I think, let me rephrase. I know. I really approached that evening, that date, as I'm going to go on a date with a guy. And if it's horrible, wonderful. I never have to see him again. If
Yeah.
it's great, wonderful. I've had a wonderful date that helps restore my trust in humanity. This is lovely. And so I really went into it thinking, I'm never going to see this guy again, which allowed me to be the most authentic version of myself. And I now have clients try this every day, and it has magical results. This idea of what if we're not going into a first date, second date, third date, trying to be chosen? But what if we're going in unabashedly ourselves and saying, "This is me, let's have some fun." And it is such a delight. And yeah, that's my little
Oh my
story.
God. Okay, there's so many layers to this. I want to just like peel away for a second because you said some things that are so, so important and synergistic with like how I treat even dating. And there's a lot of parallels between the sex and like how you show up in the
Yes.
world, right? And the dating thing. And like for you, what was so beautiful about your transformation is you put the power back on you because
Yes.
before, if you think about it, it makes sense. Like you attracted someone who was more controlling of you and also who wasn't like kind of clear with his own stuff, right?
Yes.
But that's because you were in the back seat. And so
Yes.
you attracted that kind of lopsided thing. And the minute you put yourself in the driver's seat and you had more of that like power, and it's like, I'm just gonna go where I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna do what I want to do. But you shouted it out to the world, you attracted a man very different. And I think
Yes.
that's so important for you listening to hear because even with sex, and when you went over those four categories, like how does that relate to just you in general in your life, like not just the sex? So I love everything about what you shared. Like that's super, super cool. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think both what you're saying and what I teach people is it's about being present. It's not
Yes.
worrying about like who you're attracting or what your past has been like. It's worrying about what is now and how we connect as humans, as you say, and seeing what you like and what you don't like. And when you're really present with things, that's when the magic starts unfolding because you're not in this like chasing energy, right? Like you're just
Mm-mm.
more in a leaning back, receiving energy and just having fun with it. So it's
Yes.
just a beautiful dance, you know. Well, I was curious because you said you do have this like garden that you talk about, the sexual belief
Mm.
garden. I was wondering what that was and how that relates
Yes.
to everything.
Oh, so I'd love to talk about it because it so connects to the work I was doing in that basement as
Yeah.
I was weeding my metaphorical sexual garden. And I didn't find terms for it until I stumbled into the work of the incredible Reverend Beverly Dale and
Mm.
a book she wrote for folks in our field. And I really started to say, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I did. So I'd love, do you want to be like my willing participant in this exercise? Do you want to just do it
Of
with me?
course, as long as we're keeping
Okay.
it kind of clean. Like
Oh, it's totally
my
clean. It's
listeners
totally
aren't
clean.
used to like raunchy stuff.
No, no, this doesn't even, because these can
Okay.
just be things that you're thinking of in your own mind. So,
Hmm.
the way I take a client through this exercise is very expansive. We start at birth and we come till now. But when I do it in a more condensed version, and anyone listening can do this too, but you and I can do it like right here,
Hmm.
is do these little benchmarks at the ages of 7, 14, and 21. So I'm going to have you go back in time to 7-year-old you.
Hmm.
Okay. And I want you to think of the different human beings who are influencing your idea and your understanding of relationships, of your body, of sex. Okay. At 7 years old. So I just want you to be thinking where
Okay.
you were in life, if you were in school, what town you lived in, who your friends were. Okay. All these types of things. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some fill in the blank questions, and I just want you to think of the answers in your head. You do not need to share them with your audience. Okay.
Hmm.
But we'll see at the end if there's any themes. First question. My body belongs to fill in the blank.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Mhm. It's a
Really good.
girl's job too. It's a boy's job too. Relationships are, sex is. We'll stop there. Now I want to fast
Love
forward
those. Love those. I hope you listening are writing those down. Those are
and
great.
pause and go back. Pause
Hmm.
and go back if you need to. Okay, so now 14. So fast forward up to 14. I'm going to ask you some new ones where, just get a feeling of your life. And again, you're answering at the age of your 14-year-old self. Okay. Relationships are, I want to stay safe. I, my body belongs to, it's a girl's job too. It's a guy's job too. Sex is. Okay. Now we're going to fast forward up to 21. Very important age for so many of us.
Oh, yeah.
Not all of us were getting married as a virgin with their mother dying, but it's just some
Oh,
of us have different stories. Okay, so here we go. My body belongs to. Sex is. It's a woman's job too. It's a man's job too. Relationships are. I want to stay safe. I. So we'll pause there. But what's so interesting about those ages 7, 14, and 21 is they tend to be times that are very important developmentally to every single human being.
mm,
And what we find is that there were certain beliefs about how life worked, about how sex worked, how bodies worked, how relationships work, that were planted in our metaphorical gardens. So some of us have subconsciously been weeding our gardens. And those subconscious weeding efforts I call you got rid of explicitly negative beliefs. Good job, pat yourself on the shoulder. If when you were going through this exercise, you were like giggling, like, I don't believe that anymore, right? One of my clients believed that sex was, at 7 years old, adults eating each other's stool because
Oh,
she was like, what is the grossest thing I could think of? Like, it's got to be so gross. Okay. So she doesn't
um,
believe that anymore. It's
got
not
it.
affecting her idea of sex and love in relationships. It's explicit. Okay. So any of those we weed from our garden.
Hmm.
Now, some of those that you found yourself saying, gentle audience, might feel like, ah, I know I don't believe that anymore, but oh my goodness, Lauren, you're exactly right. Shows up in my life today. Ah, that would be what I call a latent negative belief. It's going to feel like you
Mm.
tried to pull a dandelion out, but the weed got stuck under the soil. I like to say, with a little bit of tilling, education, support, podcasts like this, you can get those out. It's really awesome to know that latent negative beliefs, they're just right there. They just need some tilling and you can get them out. The deepest level of negative belief mm, is a body based negative belief. And so, if there were any of those, as one was going through your own memories, that when I paused and gave the fill in the blank time,
Hmm.
if your body had a ugh response, you felt your eyes close, you felt your tummy clench, you felt a gag response, you turned your head, you felt your shoulders tighten, that would be a body based negative belief. And the Reverend Beverly Dale equates it to soil blight. And what I love to tell my clients is when there's a patch of earth that has soil blight, a good farmer knows that it needs a couple certain things. It needs rest, it needs sunlight, it needs rain. And then one of my dear clients who's a master gardener told me the other day, it needs vitality. I said, oh my God, tell me more. And she said, it needs new nutrients. And that needs to soak into the soil. So, for those of us who have negative beliefs about relationships, our own selves, what we bring to the table, the sex that we have, we get to turn towards those body based responses with kindness and compassion. We get to take time. There is no rush on those. Some of us, like me, have things that were planted in our garden that we gave no consent to. It's not okay. It's not our faults. We get the time to luxuriate in this rest that we deserve while also learning new things and while also getting lots of sunlight and while also working with people to help equip us to heal and heal that sick soil. So I'm curious, as I've explained all of these, were there
Yeah.
any themes from 7/14/21 or anything that made you giggle or anything you would like to share? Again, these can feel super personal. So just anything that
Oh,
jumped
yeah.
out to you.
No, what, and what's coming to me, and I'm also thinking of like, people that I've worked with, and just the metaphor of the garden is so interesting. I mean, for me, I didn't, it's funny because I had such a beautiful childhood. I was really blessed, and I don't, I didn't see much variation. So that was the pattern, is that I'm like, no, it
Beautiful.
seemed to just kind of grow in a healthy way. I didn't have any kind of negative things. But what came up to me, and it's kind of how we started the podcast, is more about like life experiences in relation to sex, not maybe, like the beliefs. But I wondered, and this could be like kind of a final question. See, we did it. I told you we
I
were going to
told,
go
no,
past. I know,
there
and
was
I
no
know
way.
you need to leave soon, so we got to. But is that when you've been in a relationship for a really long time, you almost like settle into the garden
Yes.
and you forget what like the other gardens feel like and what they look like, and you just get kind of like stuck in that garden without things blooming there. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh,
And so
yes.
what I see a lot is that also like the time element of things, like people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s might have a very different picture of a garden than like the kids growing up now, where there's way more information. It's not full of shame, right? And so a 20-year-old garden now is going to look very different than a 60-year-old garden. So I just wonder how you handle that with people who are trying to date later in life when it's been a really long time, like me way back when.
Oh, this is so good. I'm going to add this into my gardening thing. I love that idea of yes, we can, if we're in a vegetable garden, right? We can forget that, oh my goodness, floral gardens exist, or like a boxwood garden, right? Or we're like, this is
Right.
everything that we've ever known. And when I was growing up, everybody else was planting vegetable gardens, right? But
Yeah,
now we,
right,
right?
exactly.
Like this could go on forever and ever. It's interesting that you bring this up because one of the journal articles that I read in school when I started stumbling into this idea of sexual beliefs,
Hmm.
was this beautiful qualitative research paper that interviewed folks in their 70s and 60s in the UK in this like small town. And they were interviewing folks who were flourishing sexually.
Hmm.
Now, how they were flourishing sexually didn't matter. Okay, so if they were a single man who went to the pub once a month and had a beautiful little makeout with someone and came home to his house, but and lived alone but loved his life, great. You got to share your story. If you were a couple who'd been married for 50 years, great. It didn't matter. All these variances. And yet, the one common denominator was that everyone had at some point inspected their garden and decided if that was indeed what they still wanted to be in. Every single person. They had this weird piece in their story where they were like, yeah, but then in my 30s, I left my first marriage. Or, well,
Yeah.
then in my 40s, my husband and I looked at each other and we said, do we, they didn't use these words, these are my words, do we like our garden? Every person had gone back and looked at the origin story and
Hmm.
said, am I comfortable with this? And so, for those, yes, who've gotten comfortable in their gardens, I'm reading this fascinating book right now called The Fantasy Bond. And he is talking about the premise that many of us are addicted to our relationships. We don't actually love the person that we're in a relationship with.
Mm.
And so many of us, right, are continuing to do these things because we're comfortable. We've done it with friends, we've done it with family members,
Yep.
we're doing it with a lot of things, right? We are addicted to the status quo because it feels more comfortable, it feels
Comfortable. Yeah.
safer to our nervous system. And so he is really encouraging the reader, and I do the same thing with clients, to turn towards their own garden bed with curiosity and say, is this what I really want? Right? What did so if a listener was intaking what I was just sharing about, relationships are it's a woman's role too. And if you found yourself just gutturally answering some of these things that you no longer align with, it's okay to rewrite your story. It is okay to change the script. It is okay to weed the garden. And you don't necessarily have to, if you're in a long term partnership, get rid of the partnership. But you can, with careful and creative work to break open that old container and build a new one. None of us are a victim in this narrative. We're truly not. We are just so used to the gardens that we're living in that so often we will just stay with what is comfortable. So, if you are a person who is out of long term relationship and you were in one garden for a long time, I'd say to you, oh, there's hope. This really is an exciting season. I know that it can seem very vast and bleak out there. Believe me, I work with these clients who are like, where is my future partner? I would really love partnership again. And to that, I would start with the work that you and I started today
Hmm.
of what is it that you actually believe? Because do you want a partner right now? Do you just want another one of what you just had? Right? That thing that went off, that thing that was not good, that old garden? Or are you interested in cultivating this brand new, beautiful garden that draws someone to you who has been looking everywhere for you instead of trying to go back and knock on all the old garden doors that look like what you used to have. So I love that furthering of the analogy. We just must get really clear on what it is that we want, what it is that we align with as sexual beings, romantic beings, relational beings.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Like again, the dating and the sex is so similar. It's really about experience, but you first have to get clarity of what it is you want. And then how do you build your confidence with it? Well, you just go get it. You
Yes.
just get it. So if you have been in one garden for a very long time and without shame and without
Yes.
guilt, go to another garden and
Yes.
just explore it. I mean, and make sure maybe the man that you explore is manscaped in that garden. I'm just, anyway,
We can take it there. Yes,
there's so many metaphors we could play
I
off of
tell
this.
clients all the
Yeah.
time when we look at sexual encounters, And we say sex is good and bodies are good.
Yeah.
Okay. And we approach it from that angle. And we look at this sexual encounter as either recreational or relational. And we really consider, what is it that I want to get out of this, right? What if I put that on the table?
Oh,
That
wait, I just
I'm,
want to wait. Can I just highlight you? I love what you just said. Recreational versus relational.
we could
Oh,
talk for
write that
like
down. That is
20
so good.
hours more
Top.
about that differentiation,
Yeah.
that it is perfectly okay to have a recreational sexual encounter.
Yeah.
It needs to be shouted from the mountaintops. As human beings, we get to have recreational sexual encounters. So, one of the after effects I have found from my purity culture upbringing was when I was having these recreational sexual encounters, I was shocked that then these men didn't fall deep in love with me, right? Because I had always equated sex and marriage, right?
Yeah.
So I thought,
And
if I give
love.
my body to you, don't you want me? Right?
Yeah.
Forever and ever. And they would just look at me like, but this was recreational, right? We had consented to this, and we truly had. It was truly
Yeah.
consensual. I just wanted so much more. And I had never been taught that it's absolutely okay to be in a recreational sexual encounter. And then there are relational sexual encounters as well. And those come with the expectation of relationship. And it is perfectly fine to enjoy some recreational sexual encounters and go, that's not for me. That's also okay. I tell many of my clients that practicing is the way we learn. It's
Yeah.
okay if you realize that, no, a casual hookup every weekend isn't my style. I would prefer to develop an emotional connection with someone first. Great. But guess what? We can't know that until we start to do it and until we start to experience what feels like what in our bodies.
Yeah. And it also, again, there's no right answer or
Mm.
wrong answer. It's your answer. It's not
Yes.
one size fits all. It is something that like, if your journey is that you haven't had that experience, then go get it. If your journey is that you lead with sexuality and you have to learn how to build emotional intimacy first, then you go get that, right? And then so it's very like holistic, but sex
Yes.
is part of the equation. So I just love this. We definitely did it. We went over a half hour. I'm so sorry. I got to get you
Sorry,
out of
everyone.
here.
No,
Why
it's
don't you
fine.
know? I could keep going with you, of course. Tell everybody how they can find you and any kind of parting words.
Please. And you said something really important earlier that I want to bring us back to. You said, oh, it sounds like education was the thing that became your steps out. Yes. So that's why I do what I do now, my friends. So I am an educator and a coach, and I purposefully chose that angle as opposed to therapy, because the thing that truly was the most impactful in my life was at learning, was acquiring skills. And so I love working with individuals and partners all around the world to get them in care with me, to develop some skills, and then get them out of care with me. I work with folks who are in a therapeutic realm, but maybe it doesn't feel really comfortable to talk to your therapist about sex. And so those types of clients seek me out all the time. It is very normal. So I just love to put that out there. It is okay to work with a holistic sexuality educator. It's really cool and really fun. To learn more, you can go to sexedforyou.com/connect. That is going to have everything there. That is going to have a link to request a free consult with me, a link to my partnership podcast. I didn't even talk about this. I have a juicy podcast with my now partner, my now husband, Trey. It's hilarious and wonderful. We tell our story on there all the time. So if you want to know, wait, is it really possible to date in later years and find a love of your life? Yes, go to the partnership podcast. And then also my social handle, Sex Ed for You on Instagram, is all linked in there. So again, sexedforyou.com/connect.
Awesome, Lauren. I so enjoyed this. We'll have to do it again sometime, or maybe I can go on your podcast.
Please, please.
Yeah, that would be so much fun. Thank you for joining me today. This has been the Charisma Quotient. Of course, I'm your host, Kimmy Seltzer. And remember, you can build confidence, make connections, and find love from the outside in. And if you want more, of course, go to my site, kimmyseltzer.com. And if if something in today's episode resonated, even just a little bit, maybe you're noticing a pattern in your dating life, maybe attracting men who feel shut down, unavailable, or unsure, but it's something a whole lot more. And or maybe it's just like your confidence, your sexy confidence is super low. In February, I am hosting a flirt workshop where I will teach you how to flirt without pressure, without games, without feeling awkward. And this is the head space, right? This is the head part that Dr. Ann was talking about. It's not just pick up lines or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about learning how to use your body language, your energy, your charisma, your style to create the attraction and connection in real life. So just go to stophatingdating.com. That's stophatingdating.com and register. It's co ed, it's fun, it's interactive. This is probably my most popular one. So you definitely want to grab your seat. And remember, working on you is working on your dating life. That's all for now.